What's up, everybody? So this is episode 33 of Drinks and Dogs. I'm here with my brother, KD Matthews. But before we start talking, I always wait to the end to do a shout out to our sponsor, our main sponsor, Ray Allen, one of the largest manufacturers in the dog training world. They do everything from your protection, law enforcement work to pets, you name it, they have it. As what Working Dog Radio says, they've been manufacturing gear before there were dogs or dog training or whatever they say on there. So make sure you check out rayallen.com/K9SL and use the Primal 10 code for a discount. And that is Primal 10, all caps. So what's up, brother? How are you doing?
Good afternoon, sir. I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. I just dropped off Ivy at school. It's been crazy weather, so another atmospheric river. I've never heard the term atmospheric river as much.
Atmospheric river?
Yeah, like I haven't heard that term ever in my life, other than this last like few months living in California, which to some people, the rain may not be a big deal
Dude,
to
I live in
them, but
Florida. Like, we have months on end of every day it's gonna pour.
when you guys are like humid though too, right? Like it's kind of warm when it's raining over there.
Well, yeah, because our rainy season is when it's hot, like
Okay.
hot. So every single day, usually around between 2 and 4, you're gonna get like the skies are gonna open. But the thing
Yeah.
is, it's been like 98 degrees all day. So the sky's open on the pavement. And then when it stops, you are heck, man, fighters can cut weight right in the street because it's like being in a sauna, man. It's like steam coming up, and it's yeah. So like for us, rain
Yeah.
is like no,
Oh
right now
no.
it's dry season. So like you'll get a little bit of rain here and there, but mostly it's dry. So we were talking earlier and you're like, oh, we're having, it's rain again. And like, didn't you guys just have like some big epic novel rain like a month or so ago and it was flooding and you have that again?
Yeah, so it hasn't. So like, it's not the weather per se. Like like you said, like over there where it rains a lot. Like Aaron always jokes around because she's from Minnesota. When I lived in Hawaii, like it's similar to like Florida with the rain. But like it's rained consistently, and because it doesn't rain here, like or it hasn't rained here in the last like this much in the last 20 something years, it's been pretty like wreaking havoc on like on our roads and as you've seen, like where I live, so like we have those creeks and like all the reservoirs are flooding and there's just it's getting pretty gnarly. But yeah, we had like one of a record breaking storm they hit like multiple times in the last like month or so where we got snow at our house. It's everything froze over, then the rain started hitting again and yeah, so it's been interesting. So but the cool thing about it is California is apparently out of our drought now. So
Okay. So
yeah.
like I heard, what limited I hear because I don't watch any, mainstream news or media. California's usually like suffering from drought. You hear about like the
Yeah.
almond farmers are always struggling because almonds require like an obscene amount of water. Don't ask me how I know that, useless trivia, but like I know almonds require an insane amount of water, and now you don't have a drought.
Yeah, so we're looking pretty good. Other than just the nuisance of rain and people not wanting to do anything in the rain. Other than that, it's all right.
Have we ever talked about my theory on California weather and how
Oh
it affects California socio-psychological vibes and energy?
no, well, let's talk about it. I'm interested.
This is that's what I love about this show. Like, yeah, we have an agenda, a couple things that hit on, but like whatever. Dude, so I have this theory, and that's all it is, complete theory. So as you know, I had my first time in California was Canine Street League trial number 1, San
Yep,
Diego.
San Diego.
Like that was the first time I'd ever been to California. And I'm an East Coast guy. I, see California on TV. Um, it was awesome to finally get out there, and I'm happy that Southern Cali was my first exposure to California. So I
Yeah.
fly into San Diego, and get off the plane, get my car, And immediately I went straight to one of my clients' houses. Right. So I have interestingly enough, like I have a disproportionate number of clients in California. Um, so one of my clients was like 20 minutes from the airport. And I go straight there. We're going to do a session, hang out. And I was, I was like, I was such a tourist, dude. Like I felt like a little kid. I mean, I still, I'll be 45 in June, and I still have the excitement of like an 8-year-old. Like when new things excite me, and I am very excitable. I enjoy new things. I remember I'm sitting in her house and I'm having a beer, and all my clients always have beer for me. Now they need to have bourbon because I don't drink beer anymore. But separate story. I just remember sitting in her dining room, and we're talking dogs, and there's a part of me that's checked out, and she observed it, and we had a discussion about it. The reason why I was checked out was I was just so enamored with the fact that here I am, September, at home in Florida. It's hot as balls. And here I am sitting in this person's house. She had every window open, and her French doors were like just wide open, and there's like this breeze coming through the house, and I'm very much like an outdoorsy, the weather, the climate, the environment influences how I feel dramatically. So good weather makes me feel good, like puts me in a wonderful psychological state. And I'm just sitting there with a beer. I'm just like, and so she called me out on it. She's like, are you good? You're kind of checked out. I'm like, her name's Lori. I said, Lori, I, I just love the fact that I'm sitting in your house and every door is open. There's a breeze. Like, this is just wonderful. So then we got talking about the weather. Fast forward to the trial. You know, I'm out checking out this interesting geography. I felt like I was on Mars. It was all red rocks and stuff and whatnot.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I've noticed is now I'm 3 trips into California. And even, last trial was warm.
Yeah.
It was our, trial number 3 was warm. It was hot. In general, I am finding from personal experience, it's now matching up with what I've read and what I've observed about California has pretty much like one of the best, most pleasurable, all around friendly climates in the United States. Would you perhaps agree or?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've definitely I always like kind of the joke, especially now traveling throughout the country. I always like to, I kind of joke around with the guys like, we're very spoiled in the sense when it comes to like our weather because there's like this is probably the most extreme winter I can remember we've had in 20 something years. And I've also been in New York and where it's like or Minnesota where like it's crazy like snow everywhere below 30. We've done seminars in
Yeah.
New York or at Tom's place where it's snow on the ground, it's freezing. But there you go. Shout out to Tom.
Little shout out to nephew. Hey there,
Yeah,
nephew. Get a little no bad dogs.
there you go. And and then being in Memphis where it's like 100% humidity, 110 degrees outside, like just a variety of different places. But like in Cali, like yeah, it gets hot sometimes, where it's like 100 degrees, but it's dry. Does it rain sometimes? Yeah. I mean, we do have one of I say we are definitely more spoiled in the sense of like our climate, plus you can go anywhere. Like you can go to the beach in like 45 minutes. You can take a couple hours, be in the snow, or now, another 45 minutes up the hill and then you can be in the snow, with this winter. So, I mean, we definitely have one of the easier going climates, no real extremes there.
Okay, so that leads me into my theory. I'm a firm believer that pressure leads to power, pressure leads to strength and growth. We talk about it in the context of building dogs' confidence all the time. We talk about it a little bit. We should talk about it more about building dog owners' confidence, et cetera, et cetera. I feel a part of an individual's journey involves the environment they come up in. And part of that environment is climate, weather, geography, right? California has a very interesting cultural, socio-political climate.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder if the lack of environmental and climate extremes has contributed to a state of mind or a tolerance level, a perhaps a low threshold for stress, change, and or, you know, ability to deal with problems, that a contributing factor, not the sole factor, of course, but a contributing factor is the fact that the weather's so damn nice. Like what type of climate-based adversarial challenges must you overcome? I grew up in upstate New York, right? Same, region as good old Tom. And every winter, man, like you're dealing with some bullshit, man. Like when
Yeah.
you get your driver's license, man, you better learn how to drive in snow. You better learn how to be safe. You better learn how to deal with people spinning around you on icy roads. And like that's massive amounts of stress because there's potential death involved anytime you get on the road. You know, you're confronted with the reality of potential extreme weather conditions. And as a component, again, I have to stress this so people don't like try to like, I don't want to make it too easy for people to take shit out of context. Like that hardens you a little bit. That builds a little resilience in you. And of course, I grew up in the outdoors, camping, fishing, being out in the winter, being out in cold, learning how to deal with cold safely, learning how not to get hypothermia, learning how to make a fire, learning how to camp, learning how to stay warm. Like, that builds some resilience. In California, if you're looking for resilience, you better get it from somewhere other than the damn weather.
I think
That's my
it's
theory.
also I think it's independent on where too. Because there are parts of Cali like where you experience some pretty harsher weathers or things of that nature. Like there's some parts in like northern, southern, where it gets extreme heat, or extreme colds, where you do get to deal with certain elements that like you're talking about. And those people are definitely a little bit different. Like
I
than
was gonna say, I bet you the people that live there's an observable, measurable difference.
Yeah, and then you go into different city. I mean, because I'm a firm believer in the same thing too. Is the way that you're raised, whether it's environmental, whether it's social, whatever, hard comings, going through difficult things, create whether they can either make you a weaker person because you give in, or they make you a stronger person because you go through. So those are different elements. Those are different things. But the elements that we see here, and kind of what you're talking about with the social climate and just people just in general. I'll give you an example. Um, so like traveling to New York, traveling to Memphis, traveling to all the different places I travel to where they have extreme weather, like different than California. People drive hours to train from state line to different states across states. I've never, at the most, I've traveled to the east all the time. Like people are like, oh, I drove 10 hours to get here. I drove all 2 days to get here. I drove across the country to get here. In California, if it's raining, it's hard to get people to drive 45 minutes to a training session. It is difficult for people to go, like it's, oh, weather's bad, a little bit of traffic, 30 minutes, I don't want to drive. And it's just, it's kind of something that, people are just used to here. It's a different way of life. And you can see it, not I'm from California, I'm from Cali, but like, I've also had a quite the past. So, I've traveled throughout the country and experienced a lot of different things in life, but you can see it. I mean, there's different parts of Cali where, they're used to the certain weather, and when these things happen, you can kind of see some people buckle a little bit. So yeah, you wouldn't be too far off. I'm pretty sure there's some studies about that we should probably look into.
Man, it's all tied together. It's when we watch the struggles that people have with their dogs, as dog trainers who are aware that we need to look at the human end of the leash,
I mean,
a
look at
lot.
dogs that don't want to go to the restroom in the rain.
Yes.
You're like, oh, my dog doesn't want to go to the restroom in the rain. Do you go outside with your dog in the rain? No, I don't want to go in the rain. Do you not see the correlation? The correlation there.
Well, I remember seeing that, way, way, way back when I used to put a suit on, when I was young and spry. Um, you'd get people who wouldn't come out to club when it was raining. And we're like, hey, genius. What if it rains on trial day?
Yeah.
Like, here you're dealing with you know this, and our viewers know this. Like, you are dealing typically with a different type of dog owner when you're in club, when you're in protection sports or any type of sport. It's usually a handler who's pretty savvy. It's somewhat like they're into training. They're not just a pet dog owner that overfeeds their dog and keeps them on the couch. No. But so when someone who it's almost like you have an expectation of them understanding environmental conditions, understanding variables, understanding this, but they don't want to come out to club when it's raining. It's like, did you just have a brain fart? Because that flies in the face of all other logic that you're applying in the training of your dog. Like, here we are at club with decoys, pressuring dogs to build their threshold, to build their resilience, but you won't come out because it's raining. So what happens when it rains? And we've all seen the dogs who, never mind if it's raining, if it rained an hour ago, we've all seen dogs who don't want to lie down on wet grass.
Yep.
I mean, dogs that will hit the deck. I call it gunshot down or shotgun down. And boom, explosive downs. If the grass is wet, you get that elbow up, or the elbows are up like a half an inch to an inch. You're like, that's not a down, you son of a beep. Like, get all, and the dog doesn't want to go down because they don't want that. Well, that's because you haven't made them.
Yep.
Good luck on
Nope.
trial day if it rains.
I mean, that's like, all in general, like, we train like in the heat, we train in the wet, whether it's raining or whatever, the cold, it's always, like you said, it's just making sure that dog is ready for anything and everything. And it's not necessarily like just getting, your dog used to a certain levels of pressure from the decoy or noises or, stimulus from accessories. But like you said, it's, weather as well. Weatherproofing is 100% something that I think people, you're like, for like example, like our street league club in at Primal Canine, everyone's pretty diehard, when it comes to, and a lot of them travel from pretty far distances. I don't believe we have one member besides our staff who are from San Jose, Gilroy, or the surrounding areas. Most people are driving out from like Monterey. A lot of them are like some from like Utah, Hollister, like places that are much further that require a lot more driving, and they're very dedicated. So we train in the rain, we train with the heat, we do whatever we got to do, even when the shop is flooding, because that's what's happened this last like couple of weeks. We got the shop flooding and stuff like that with all the water coming in, but we still train.
Did you ever see the video I did on social media about hot dogs, about dogs in heat?
No, the video about hot.
Dude, you got to see it. I'll tag you in it.
Yes, please. I need to watch this.
And for those who don't follow me on Instagram, step it up.
Right.
Step it up at KD Matthews at 1T. Why aren't you following me?
G
It's
put a little like,
he'll put a flag, he'll put
Instagram
something up
thing over
there.
there.
So I did a video this past summer about how to, dogs in the heat. Because as you know, and anyone who follows me knows, I do unfortunately have to spend a lot of time on Facebook. It's just part of my job, part of my responsibilities. And, I'm in a couple rather large Facebook groups where I'm a moderator, I'm the resident trainer, group approved trainer, whatever. And, we're talking, 100,000 people. Typically, these are both the groups that I do this in particular are pit bull, bully type groups. So you already know. Now, we're not talking working handlers. We're not talking competitors. We're talking pet dog pit bull owners, right? You
Yeah.
already know what type of mess that is. And, so when it starts getting warm out, you start seeing all the posts of, how can I keep my dog busy inside because it's too hot to go outside? I'm like, what do you mean it's too hot to go outside? Your dog is not made of glass. Oh, well, number one, okay, I can understand if you have, I'm probably going to say this word wrong. So I'd love for someone to correct me. Brachiophilic or
Brachycephalus.
brachiocephalus.
Yeah.
That where
Short
they have the
muzzle.
super short muzzle. They do not have the ability to cool their air off, blah, blah. That's a legitimate physical concern that is out of your control. That's just the anatomy of the dog. But The big one that is in people's control, that so many people, more and more people now, um, are screwing up, is canine obesity. I got some stuff I'm working on for that. Maybe make a YouTube video or something, bring in some vets to try to help. Like that's one of my soapboxes. It's one of the ones I will preach about. Like I'll get real preachy on that one.
Yeah.
I have a real problem with canine obesity. I have a real problem with people who overfeed their dogs in spite of all the health risks and that the fact that they're killing their dog. But anyway, all right. Yeah, you might have to be careful with bringing your, anything over, 90, 95 degrees, high humidity. You better be careful if you have an overweight dog, because you've now screwed up that dog's body's ability to naturally regulate their temperature. But when you have a dog that's not overweight, you have a dog that doesn't have a super short muzzle, and you're telling me you can't take your dog outside because it's 90 degrees, like, your dog is not made of glass. Now, your
Yeah.
dog might have your dog might find it challenging, but it's not the dog's fault. It's your fault because you don't take them outside. If you keep them bubble wrapped in artificial climate controlled air all the time, well, yeah, they're going to have a tough time out there because you did that. You didn't condition the dog's body to the heat. You didn't help. Now, why wouldn't you want your dog to be resilient? Why wouldn't you want your dog to be physically able to cope with a diverse, weather conditions? I live in Florida. We were just talking about that earlier, like in a different
Yeah.
context. I live in Florida. Dude, summertime, it's hot and humid. That combination is tough for respiration on dogs. It's tough for them to cool down. I regularly do this. I can walk my dogs in the middle of the day 3 miles with zero, zero problems, zero potential heat stroke. Like, they are fine. Why? Because I condition them to it. As it starts getting warmer, I slowly have them outside more and more and more and more. I mean, well, that's hard to do because, like, they're outside even when it's, Florida, when it's
Yeah.
chilly. They love being outside. But my dogs are outside a lot, but they sleep and live indoors. I have indoor dogs, but I have them outside a lot. And when it's hot, I make sure I have them outside a lot. I make sure they have a yard, there's shade available, there's fresh water available, but I want them in that climate. I want them in that environment so they become resilient to it. Another thing that's important, if you do work your dog in the heat, don't take them and put them immediately in the air conditioning.
Yep.
Like, if we go for a walk in the daytime, we go for a walk when it's hot and I see the tongue flop out on the side and I know they're getting hot, I do not just bring them right in the AC. No, you're going to go outside. You're going to cool down in the shade. You're going to cool down slowly. You're going to cool down naturally, because we're not in a heat stroke situation where, we're not trying to cool the dog. You
I'm
know,
trying to rapid cool.
yeah, no, this is just, it's acclimation. How is it that there's dogs right now in Saudi Arabia and they're not melting?
Yep.
How? How is it possible? If people are like, if it's over 90 degrees, your dog will die. Really? Then how come there's like, what did we do before air conditioning? How did dogs make it to 2023? How did they make it? Because air conditioning is early to mid 20th century. So that leaves over 15,000 years dogs managed to survive without AC. Now suddenly they can't. Get the out of here.
Well, you got to think about it too. When air conditioning was even invented and applied, who had it? And when did it become a mass, a mass thing where all people had air conditioning? Even now, like certain people don't have it. But I mean, that's all. It all comes down to conditioning, them to that environment, to that weather. And the problem is, it's not, a subject that we didn't really bring up. So it's not really the dogs; it's the people. What they're not comfortable with. What
That
their
Well, you
propaganda is
mentioned it with
going
the
on.
rain. You said
Yeah,
it with the rain. You said, well, because you don't want to go out in the rain, your dog doesn't go out there. Same thing. You don't want to go out in the heat because your dog doesn't want to go out. Your dog doesn't want to go out in the heat because you never take him out because you don't want to go.
yeah. I mean, just same thing with dogs and same thing with people. You got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's how you get better. That's how you're able to do things. Because if not, we're just gonna be stuck inside a house with AC and not getting better, staying the same, and that only hinders our dogs.
Yeah. Which is why, as dog trainers, man, we gotta help people grow. I
Oh yeah,
it's one of the, I've not alluded, I've flat out mentioned it and said it, that I am working on a number of different projects specifically for dog trainers. I mean, I already work with dog trainers, in a couple contexts. So I got a new context that I'm working on for them, and part of it is like some coaching on how to deal with people, how to coach people. And
yeah.
I see the posts from dog trainers, and I see when they complain. And it's interesting because people say, well, KD, you complain on Facebook too. I'm like, yeah, it's very strategic though. Like when I make a post, it's never venting. It's all, I'm looking for engagement. I'm playing the algorithm. There is a method to my madness. Well, there are other people who do it, and I know they're not doing it to play an algorithm. Like I can tell by the verbiage, I can tell by the words they use. And when people tell me, or when I see how some trainers address issues that are related to the dog owner, like it's no secret that they're having issues with their clients. It's no mystery why they're not getting the follow through, while they're not getting the repeat business, whether they're not getting the progress with the dog, because like they don't know how to coach a person.
So funny thing is, we did this career day at this place called Monte Middle School, and it was actually a pretty cool setup. All the kids got to like pick. They knew like who was coming, and they got to pick where they wanted to go. So me and Aaron, or the Primal Canine, we were the most popular ones. So we talked to like 100 something kids. It was really cool. I brought Zilla out. We did a bunch of demo stuff in classrooms. Everyone got to pet him. It was like this really cool thing. And one of the things where, what prerequisites do you need to do to become a professional dog trainer? And a lot of these kids were just asking me like, oh, it must, like the whole typical thing, or like, oh, you get to train dogs all day, like, it must be really nice and really cool type of thing. I was like, yeah, I was like, it's fun working with dogs. I was like, but dog training isn't really, dog training, especially on the professional level. A lot of dog training itself is like 10% of the business. You have to do your business aspect of it, and a lot of the dog training is having people skills and being able to relate to people, build rapport, having the communication to be able to help them help their dog and be able to relate to them, and you kind of taking the ego down and just like being able to communicate properly. And a lot of the kids, you could just see like they just looked at me like, well, like just like one of those things where like, oh wait, like then they started to see the wheels turn a little bit. And I was just telling them, well, sometimes you're someone's therapist. Sometimes you're talking for a majority of the session versus training, just to kind of communicate with them. Like, it's one of those things where people, I told them, I was like 100% of the time when someone wants to apprentice under me and like, learn to be a dog trainer and work for us, the 100% of the time they say, well, I wanted to train dogs because I don't like people. And me kidding, you and I have talked about this before, and the kids all laughed about it because in their mind they're probably thinking the same thing. And I was like, that's the wrong mindset to go into when you want to become a professional dog trainer. If you want to just train your dogs and learn how to train dogs and like just train your or personal dogs, whatever, you hang out in your backyard, front yard, at the park, train your dog, and that's fine. But to be a professional dog trainer, having people skills and being able to help people, learn how to train their dog is, and not even that, just kind of live a life and become better, and overall help them in just general their life. Like that's dog training. That's professional dog training now. It's helping people, help themselves, and help in return it helps their dog. And you can see like in their minds, like they started kind of putting the pieces together and understanding all that too. So that was really cool to see. But I mean, like that's the thing, what professional dog trainers, and I'm seeing it more and more like come through nowadays with the communication aspect of it, is a lot of it is like it's almost downright based in like almost like an ego type of a thing now for dog trainers, where it's like, this is how you do it. This is the only way how you do it. You don't get it. You're dumb or whatever it may be. And then they kind of shut them out, or they make them feel bad about themselves or whatever it may be. Like, they ridicule them. I see this all the time. They won't take a step back and realize like, oh, hey, this is how I have to communicate to this person. This is how I have to relate to this person in order to get them to feel comfortable enough or understand, for the information to process. And that way they change the thing that they're doing in order to get the results that they want.
Yes, ego. And I think the reason why the ego gets involved in such a non-productive way is insecurity. I mean, ego is related to insecurity. I mean, that's what our ego
Yep.
is. It's the voice that says, don't let anybody know. that you're wrong, or don't let anybody think that you don't have all the answers. You know, the ego is a voice that will lead you down a bad road. Well, if
Yep.
you are insecure and you don't have a healthy relationship with your insecurity, people are like, how can you have a healthy relationship with insecurity? You can acknowledge it. Don't beat yourself up
Yep.
for it. Acknowledge it and work on it. Embrace it as, this is where I'm at right now. I want to get better, and this is part of it. The There's a lot of people, especially now more than ever, who are becoming dog trainers through a very non-traditional pathway. You know, the old pathway was you just spend years around dogs, apprenticing, or doing what you got to do until you get it. You train a bunch of dogs, a lot of dogs, without accepting a penny for it,
Yep.
and you work your way up. Well, now with these online certifications and just the ability of social media to create an image that is not validated in any way with functional experience, there's so many new dog trainers, and I'm not knocking them in the sense that they don't even know there was another way. They don't, to them, like, well, that's how you become a dog trainer. Well, they find themselves in this business with no guidance, no true support, and now they're confronted with challenging dogs and even more challenging owners. And here they are taking money, and they're trying to do their best, right? They know they took money. They know they got to provide a result, but they don't have the tools. They don't have the toolkit, which is based in experience. They don't have the reps, and they don't have the support, meaning they don't have a trusted mentor. They don't have a trusted place where they can go to bounce ideas off, to trial and error, to work on things. So that's, I think, where this is human psychology, right? You're aware that a lot of times people get nasty with you, or they give you pushback or resistance. It's just because they don't understand. It's not you, it's that they just don't understand something, which makes it our job as a trainer to help them understand. It's our job at that point to find a different way to explain it, to realize this person doesn't have a problem with me. They don't understand what I'm trying to get across to them. So I got to come at it a different way. I have to explain it differently. I have to Well, a lot of trainers don't have the ability yet. They don't have the tools yet to do that. So then they fall back to, because I said so. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think so. I think a lot of it comes like what you're saying, but I think a lot of it comes from false validation too. Because you talk about like social
That's a
media, right?
factor.
So I mean, like think about it, like everyone has their own insecurities. If you don't have insecurity, you're lying to yourself. There's some form of insecurity happening, right? We all have some form of insecurity, whether on the lowest levels or highest levels or something there, right? So like you're always going to kind of question yourself, or I believe you should always kind of question yourself. That's how you get better. So, when you're a lot of times, especially with the influx in social media, we have a big social media following, with all the accounts that we have. So, we're not talking shit about anything like that. But a lot of times when you're new in the game and you get this like kind of like, I don't want to say like some form of clout through dog training, whether it's through having followers on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, YouTube, you get constantly people, and let's say you don't have enough reps, because the way that I grew up in dog training was through a mentor that put me in front of a ton of dogs without getting any money, working a ton of dogs without getting any money, just constantly going through it, learning and figuring out, getting the reps, understanding, watching how my mentor conducted his business or mentors conducted their business. How do they handle things? So I learned all these things without any form of like validation or anything like that, or like random people saying, because for some reason everyone wants validation from strangers they've never met in their life or never probably will meet, but it all goes to their head, right? And they don't have the reps. So I got a ton of reps before before any of the social media stuff happens. But what I see is that when we bring in new trainers and haven't been doing it as long, or have been training in the social media age of dog training, they don't have the reps, but they got strangers saying, oh, you're doing so great, I want to train with you, you're my dog, you're a hero, or whatever, type of a thing like that. They don't got the reps. So when it goes to communicate to the client and the client questions them, they go back to, instead of thinking like, oh man, like maybe I should troubleshoot a little more and communicate better to this person, they block that part out, which kind of tempts their ego, and they go back to the false validation that they get from strangers they never met in their life. They're like, wait, this person must be wrong, because all these other they could even be little troll accounts or fake troll farms accounts like that have given them fire emojis on their posts and like, no, I know what I'm doing. You know that this person's wrong,
The
I'm right, type
fire
of a thing.
emoji. It's
Yeah,
all about the fire emoji, man. You get that fire emoji and you're walking around like you hear
yep.
music when there is none playing. You got your own theme song. I got fire emojis, man.
But like like I think it's a combination of both those things. And when people ask me all the time about how to become a dog trainer, I say the same thing. Find a mentor, put your hands on as many leashes as you possibly can under proper supervision, get your work in that way. Don't like I told these kids at that middle school, I'm like, there is no governing body in dog training. There's not a singular governing body in dog training. There is no one school to go to be a certified dog trainer. It's just individual perspectives from different dog trainers in different forms that try to uniform things to make it sound professional, and all these other aspects of things. But like, there is no governing body. It's essentially like Lord of the Flies in the dog training world. That's kind of what it is. So it's like, you
Dude, I
know,
love that.
so so I'm just very straightforward, and like all these kids are like they all grasp it, and they all learned like so much from that stuff, and I thought it was super cool. But like, that's just kind of how I view it.
Now you just got me thinking, like, how about Hunger Games? Like the Hunger Games Dog Trainer Edition. Like, oh wow, each little town or city was its own, label of type of dog trainer. Like, oh man, that would be rad. No, you're right though. Like that's another factor is that false validation. That's a
Yeah,
huge, and it's not a little factor by any means. It's incredibly relevant. It's incredibly powerful. Um, but and at the end of the day, it comes back to it's like you need more reps, you need more experience, and maybe you need somebody in your ear to challenge you. Maybe you need someone in your ear to question you. And that's what I do. That's what I do with my dog trainer students, with my mentees,
yeah,
and because I do a lot of online work, it's a different type of mentorship. No, I'm not putting them in front of tons of dogs. I can't. It's the internet.
yeah.
But you better believe I put them in situations. I just had the other night, one of my mentees who awesome. Actually, it was the individual, her name is Lori, from awesome dog owner, awesome human being. And that was who's I was telling the San Diego story, right?
Oh,
Like I was in
nice.
the house and it was like just the weather. Um, little backstory, little one. You ever seen a boxer do competitive herding?
No, she's doing it. Hell yeah.
Oh, she's like trialing and winning and getting it like passing
Did
and
she
stuff.
post any videos of it online?
She's not very active on social media that way.
Oh man, I want to see that. I'd
I'm
like
she
follow
if
that
she
page.
has any, I'll try to find it. Yeah, I mean, and she came to me. This was a boxer that she adopted. It had
Nice.
failed at its previous adoption homes. Why? Because it was a very exuberant dog. She came to me as a new pet owner with a adopted boxer that was freaking her out a little bit. I mean, the dog would jump on her and wrap her if she
Yeah,
didn't throw the ball quick enough. Like it was getting, high arousal. The dog was getting really pushy, and she joined the Canine Blueprint. And like I mean, to say we resolved that's an understatement. She fell in love with working with dogs and just decided she found a herding group organization within I think like an hour or two she drives, and she took her boxer there and got to the point. Fast forward, now she's working at that place teaching new people coming in to do herding.
that's awesome.
She's also my mentorship. So a lot of what we work on in mentorship is, in addition to behavior, and we analyze videos and stuff. But it's like how to talk to people. And, her and I just had a conversation the other night about like talking to people. And the topic that we were discussing was, different types of motivation based on the level of rapport that you have with your audience. And this is a topic, and we had a really good conversation about it. We were breaking down a post in particular and talking about different, ways to use, if you're using written communication in social media, like you got to really think about how it can be read. And because so much communication is taking place on social media, like you have to understand that medium of communication. You have to understand, tone. If you don't have rapport, you have no control over the tonality that people read your words with. And, tone is such a big thing. It's so important in our in our interpersonal communication.
Yep.
And so we got kind of deep and we broke down some stuff. And again, that topic was about, the level of rapport you have, whether whether you're going to choose to use a carrot or a stick to motivate a client or a dog owner to do something. And I get asked a lot, or I get questioned a lot from some of my students in particular, especially mentorship. They're like, yeah, KD, but you're rough. Or I said, well, yes and no. I mean, am I blunt on Instagram? Well, yeah, it's part of my Instagram channel. It's part of how I communicate there. But with my students, I'm all over the place. I have some students where I might be borderline confrontational. Like, dude, what the are you doing? And then I could have another student who made a bigger mistake where I'll say, hey, I really like how you did this, though. Like, I won't even address the mistake right away. I might find some other little thing to be like, hey, I really like how you did that. Now let's talk about what we can do differently with this. Like, completely different approach based based on the level of rapport. How long have I been working with them? What is my current relationship with them? Where are they at? What type of learner are there? Where's their personal threshold for criticism? And then I got to get right underneath it. And then you know how it is with thresholds. You come in right underneath the threshold and then you do this.
Yep.
You tap at it. You're like, come on, threshold, get up there, get up there. We got to do that with the dog owners as much as with the dogs. It's just that who's talking about that? Who's
And
talking about that in our industry?
I mean, that's something I try to communicate to all my guys about too. It's just like, in the beginning, when you kind of have to be a chameleon in a sense when it comes to adaptation to like the individual person. You got to be able to read personality, versus just shoot in there and kind of be like, hey, this is me type of a thing. Like, with us, like, with us every single time, or with me, when I talk to people, or, any client, like you said, there's certain people that you got to be a little more forceful to when you're communicating with them, a little more abrupt, a little more straightforward. And then there's some people you kind of have to finesse a little bit in order to be able to communicate with them properly. But it's like learning their communication style, learning what helps them get better, what type of communication works for them to get better. Because I don't know how many times I've talked to people, especially in the sport things, where like, oh, my last club, it's okay. You can yell at me. Or you tell me if I'm messing up and doing all those other things. And you communicate. I learn and I communicate with them. I learn their communication style, and then I'm like, oh, and then you talk to them a little bit and you start seeing how much more positive expression, a much more positive communication style helps change the game for them, and they start to get better at it. And then I talk to them like, okay, well, why didn't you, because in the beginning they'll say, oh, you can be a little, yell if I'm messing up or anything like that. And then you talk to them a little bit later, like, oh, what happened to, like, why aren't you at that club anymore? When you get to know them a little more, and then I'm like, oh, it was just, got kind of tired of just getting beat up all the time. Like, so that communication style doesn't necessarily work for you. You think that we want to hear that because of where your past experience is, but in reality, we just want to help you. We just want to help you get better, your dog get better. So learning how to communicate with the person and, like you said, build rapport. And the first, like I mentioned this earlier, when I'm working with a new client, I don't ask them anything about their dog for like 15 minutes. It's really like, hey, how's your day going? How's the week been going for you? Just kind of finding something to relate to, that being able to talk to them. So like the barriers come down. I can see where they're at, how they communicate. And then I'm like, okay, cool. This is how I can kind of joke around with you, or, get to the basically be able to get to the point, but in a way that you understand, and build this relationship so we can constantly kind of, you know, almost build a little more pressure to make their dog better, but also be able to build that relationship up, because it is, you're 100% building a relationship with your clientele or the people. And like, that's why a lot of the times, like, my clientele, like, it's almost like we're friends. I mean, we are friends, and because we spend so much time together in communication, but like the communication becomes friendly in the matter to where it's like, I can make statements where it's, no, you're messing this up, you got to do it better. I can say things a little more abrupt, with everybody, and they can process it without getting offended or feeling bad about themselves, because the rapport that we've had and me understanding, okay, where they're at mentally, mentally at that point, I can say things to make sure, like, okay, this is how we're going to get better, give them that type of detail. But the learning how to do that is a whole other skill set that most people don't, like you said, don't talk about, don't realize it, or don't realize it, the importance of it, and they kind of keep going on their way. But I mean, like, that conversation is something that most dog trainers, especially new dog trainers, definitely need to know, you know, how to do if they want to be successful in this, in this industry.
You know what's ironic
What is it?
is that boundaries are something that almost, most functionally proficient dog trainers will talk about with their clients for the dogs, right? The dog needs some boundaries. Dog needs some boundaries. I find it interestingly ironic how many dog trainers also struggle with setting and managing appropriate boundaries with their clients. And I
Yeah.
don't, and now that's a spectrum, right? Like, we can go to a really dysfunctional place with our imagination on that, but at the same time, we can go to a very natural, normal, and almost like I see where it comes from an innocent place challenge of just simply like, if you're good at what you do, you're really good at building rapport, you're really good at helping a dog owner embrace the information you're sharing. The level of rapport that you oftentimes will acquire and build with that client does lend itself to some interesting challenges and situations in terms of boundaries. And again, I'm not talking about the crazy examples we could probably tell all kinds of stories about. I'm just
Yep.
talking about, like, you, and I'm saying this because you said something that I related to. You mentioned the word friend. If you're good at building rapport, what you need to be to effectively help these dog owners, you're going to find yourself flirting with a boundary. You're going
Yep.
to find yourself getting really close to a line of becoming friends. Now, I'm not saying friends is bad. What I'm saying is you do have to realize that that can create very natural, innocent challenges, though, when it comes to the relationship you need to maintain if they need continued help. And most of
Yep.
them need continued help. They need long-term help. And I found this myself over the years, and I've had to learn some hard lessons, and I've had some mistakes, and I've had some issues that have come up with just, and I, again, not dramatic, but like there's been times where I lost my effectiveness at changing behavior in the dog owner. I lost my ability to implement change and new information in the dog owner because I got so good at building rapport and I got along with them so well. We slow, and if you don't even know it's freaking happening.
Yep.
Suddenly you find yourself, it's my buddy. Like, we're friends. And you know this, and any dog trainer will probably be able to confirm this in a different context. If I were to say, who listens to you more about dogs? Your friends or your clients? Everyone will be like, oh,
Yep.
my friends are the worst. Like, they don't take any of my advice. They treat me like I don't know anything. Like, whatever. So if we already know that friends are less inclined to take our advice, isn't it interesting how easily a good functional rapport building dog trainer can find themselves in a friend situation with a client where now that client will start to resemble your friends because they're becoming your friend. And now you have a greater challenge at
And they start
helping them.
asking for discounts.
Yeah. Or that's a whole nother. And I've ran into
Yep.
that suddenly. And again, I'm going to keep this in a somewhat healthy context, right? I'm going to keep this in a non-dramatic context. Never mind the client slash new friend expecting a discount. I've gone through, and I'm being transparent here because maybe someone can relate to this. I remember when I was a lot younger going through where I felt uncomfortable. I'm the one. I felt uncomfortable suddenly billing them or I felt
Uh,
uncomfortable charging them. I'm taking ownership of that, right? Like I'd gotten so close and we got along. And next thing you know, you're having a beer after training. Or they're like, hey man, you want to meet up for a beer? And you're like, yeah, sure, that's cool. Like, I like you. You're cool. Like, I like your dog. I like you. Yeah, let's have a beer, man. And
yeah,
now all of a sudden, that next session, you're like, oh, well, yeah. Like, and I felt weird about it. Maybe they
yeah,
felt fine. Maybe they did. They were cool with it, but I was still young. I was still naive. So there's a lot of different ways we can look at this topic and see how important at the end of the day, right? What's the moral of the story? It's really important that someone is out there talking to dog trainers and helping them navigate these challenges, especially the new ones.
yeah. I mean, and I think like you said it perfectly. There has to be levels like of boundaries, right? Like you can be friendly, you can have, so even in friendships, like I'm talking about like actual friendships with your friends that don't apply to, dog training or anything like that. Like you can have boundaries with specific friendships. You can have boundaries within specific business related friendships. Client relations. You can be friendly and have a friendship, but you can have the boundaries that you set forward that this is how you interact with clients. Because, like you said, the waters can get muddy really quick, and it can affect a lot of different aspects of your relationship per your clients, depending on how many clients you have, whatever it may be. Some people might think you're favoring some, like, and it can get messy really quickly. But establishing those boundaries and understanding of those boundaries is really important. It doesn't necessarily mean you can be, you have to be like a jerk about it or anything like that. But I mean, like you said, maybe it's, setting a limit of like, oh no, we're not going to go grab a beer after drink. I got to work. I got to do this stuff. I have to train, and then kind of keeping your relationship nice, friendly, and open in that sense. But making sure you have those set boundaries per client for your client.
And I think it takes experience to get to the point. So, like where I'm at now is I absolutely still have made friends through
Yep.
training. It's like, so I'm not saying it can never happen. It takes experience to know how and when to allow that to happen and then still manage it if there are, I mean, there are several individuals who, I mean, we're close. Like, I want them in my life. Like, they're
Yeah.
amazing freaking human beings. And they're still in some way, shape, or form involved with me professionally. Right. Now, there aren't many, because that's a rare situation that you can manage, and there's a lot of flexibility, there's a lot of give and take, and there's a lot of responsibility that both parties carry to maintain the rules, the boundaries, the culture of that alliance. That yes, we do have a friendship, yes, we do engage in activities that like aren't strictly dog related, but we still also manage that side of things. And then I still do have individuals who we discontinued the professional dog training a lot, that part of our relationship, and now it's strictly personal. Like now it's strictly like, that's my bro, like that's my buddy.
Yeah.
He asked me for advice on dogs once in a while, but like whatever, but like no, like what are you doing about that? Like we are legit friends now, and the relationship has become much more about our friendship and has almost next to nothing to do with dogs. Like I got one buddy in particular. I mean, I, I'll ask him how his dog's doing, but like we don't talk about dogs. Like he's my friend,
Yeah.
and we talk about everything else.
Nope. So boundaries, guys. Boundaries.
Boundaries.
Yeah. But build rapport and then set boundaries,
And
or have
and
them
and
all
again,
lined up.
there's a lot of learning there. I mean, we're kind of, we're running through this quick for the sake of time, but like, when I'm working with the trainers I work with, an open invite to anybody, watching this. Like, if you want help with this stuff, like, you need help, like, shoot me a message. Like, we talk. Like, I'm doing one-on-one coaching for this stuff now.
Well, it's, I
Later
think, like you
later on.
said too. I mean, like you were saying too, Dan. I think it's why it's important that people do reach out to you, because just as we stress the importance of putting your hands on leashes and training with dogs, and like getting as many reps as possible and taking your time with it. It's also important that you do that when it comes to your client relations, how building rapport, talking and communicating with people who have programs that set up like KD, or like like what we do in our apprenticeship or shadow programs. A lot of it's we're talking about those things. It's equally, if I mean, obviously you have to have the skill set to be a dog trainer, to be a great dog trainer, you have to have tons of time on the leash. You have to have those things, but it's equally, if not more important, to have that people skill if you want to be a professional dog trainer and have a business, to have those people skills. So I think that's something that it's greatly overlooked. And I'm glad, like, people like yourself, and like even like some of the stuff we're doing are, it's coming out there, because that's only going to help these trainers.
And we know now more than ever, man, we need trainers to be their best. Like
Yeah.
I'm not, we're done with the show. Like we're on the way out. We're not getting into that, but like this more than ever. And I'm saying this not to the new trainers. I'm saying this to the old guard out there. Like this is like, we need all hands on deck. That's the like all hands on deck. We need to help any trainer we can in any way that we can now more than ever. And that's all I'll say about that. That's a good.
Well, KD.
It was a pleasure chit-chatting with you, buddy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Always fun. We'll be doing more and more of these guys. Make sure you guys are checking these out on YouTube. Obviously, if you're watching this, like, subscribe, share. Katie and I do this for free. So if you guys are listening to this, share this with your friends. Make sure you guys are following PTV Network. We're also on Spotify and all major podcast channels. So make sure you're checking us out on there, Drinks and Dogs. Again, shout out to our sponsor, Ray Allen. Make sure you go to rayallen.com/K9SL and use the Primal10 code, all caps, for your discount. KD, where can the people find you?
Facebook, KD Matthews. And guess what? Instagram's the same thing. KD Matthews with 1 T.
Awesome. And then I'm at Primal Canine, and my personal page, because I don't no longer run the Primal Canine page. My personal page is Mike Jones _PC. So yeah, you guys have a great day or great night or great morning or whatever time you're watching this or listening to this. KD, a great rest of your afternoon, sir.
You too, buddy. Stay dry. Keep your feet,
Yeah.
keep your feet out the puddles.
I'm gonna be playing in that creek a little bit later, working dog. So we're gonna have a good time.
All right, man.
Brother.
Good talking with you. Thank you.